Follow Pygmalion's lead. Acting the part of a good friend can lead to increased likability, and so can putting expectations on people. People seek to live up to these expectations whether they know it or not. If you put the expectation of a close friendship on them, they may simply comply with you to the point that you're whispering secrets to each other and laughing your heads off at inside jokes. This is known as the Pygmalion effect, named for the mythical Greek figure who fell in love with his own sculpture. It states that if you have an expectation, an image in your head of who that person will be, that is exactly who they will become to you. The implication is that however you view someone, you'll treat them in a way that brings that behavior out of them. Good expectations will lead to good outcomes. Low expectations will similarly decrease performance. If you think someone is incredibly annoying, you'll be standoffish toward them and generally act in a manner that is actually annoying in and of itself, motivating them to behave annoyingly. If you think well of someone, you'll act toward them in a manner that encourages them to be better, and you'll give them more chances. If you think poorly of someone, you'll act toward them in a manner that will make them do worse, and you won't give them the benefit of the doubt. If you're apathetic toward people, you'll act in a way that makes them apathetic toward you, all the while calling each other boring. The Pygmalion effect was discovered in 1968 by Rosenthal and Jacobson in a paper entitled Pygmalion in the Classroom. In it, students were given IQ tests, and the teachers were not told the results. However, the teachers were told that specific students comprising 20% of the class were gifted and had extremely high IQs. These students were randomly selected. At the end of the school year, the students took another IQ test, and the 20% who were randomly selected had the largest gain in IQ, the ones the teachers thought were the smartest. What does this mean? The teachers subconsciously or consciously treated them differently and gave them preferential treatment because they had a good impression of them and their intellect. The students gradually became who the teachers thought they were because of the expectations of the teachers. Our implicit-explicit beliefs influence our actions, which then influence others' beliefs about us, which then influence their actions toward us, and so on. Thus, a key to likability is to have positive expectations of people so they can rise up to meet them. Never underestimate the power of your own expectations and assumptions. You create the world you reside in through your expectations. If you were told someone was charming and fascinating, you would dig deeper into their background and discover what might be interesting about them. They would become that person to you because you gave them the opportunity and goodwill. You expected greatness, so you went out and found it. And of course, this entire process makes you more likable as well. Conversely, if you were told that same person was a boring dud, you may not even bother engaging them. Our assumptions and expectations dictate our actions and create self-fulfilling prophecies. Suppose one parent decided her kids were smart, while one parent decided her kids weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. The first parent would help her child with homework, get them a tutor, and make sure they were fulfilling their potential for intelligence. The second parent would ignore her child's homework and tell them to apply themselves in other ways outside the classroom, declaring them a lost cause. There would be a huge disparity in attention and emphasis on studying, and thus, the kids would turn out to fulfill their parents' expectations. They receive positive or negative feedback, and the cycle grows. We like to imagine that we're treating everyone equally, but that is essentially impossible if we have poor expectations of them. So assume the best of the people you're speaking with, and you'll start treating them in a way that makes them like you more. If we expect them to be charming and kind, we'll bring that out of them. Above all else, you're going to be sending 100% positive and friendly signals to everyone. People tend to respond favorably to these. This is, of course, easier said than done. How can we keep a blank slate of positivity with everyone we meet, even if we have reason to expect otherwise? One of your most effective weapons in assuming the best of others is to proactively create alternate explanations for anything negative you might perceive of them. For instance, if someone has a dirty shirt, they're not dirty. They're working so hard they didn't have time to wash their shirt. If someone overreacts and snaps at you, think about how poorly their day could have gone. There's always a spin you can use to put someone in a more positive light. It's only slightly more work to come up with an explanation besides they're just a jerk, such as they're just misunderstood. Acting the part and allowing others to act the part underlies likability. See people how they want to be seen. The first 2 points in this section have been about using perception to influence people's view of you. This section is different and is about how influencing people's view of themselves helps you become more likable. It sounds counterintuitive until you consider the fact that we like people that agree with our self-perception. We all have traits that we define ourselves by. Most of the time we take these seriously, and if someone doesn't happen to agree, that's when we become our most defensive. For instance, if you built your identity on the thought that you are as generous as they come, you will not take kindly to someone who calls you selfish and greedy. In 1981, psychologist William Swan published Self-Verification Processes, in which he talked about self-verification theory and how humans desperately want to confirm our self-views and perceptions. The theory states that humans desire to confirm our self-views and are naturally inclined to like people who help us do so, regardless of whether our views are positive or negative. Moreover, this desire to verify what we believe about ourselves is so powerful that it can actually override the desire for social approval and praise. We like to hear from others about how good of a skier we are, even if we aren't, because it verifies a belief of ours. We want people to see us for who we are, and this means from only our perspective. A study by Ritz and Stein in 1995 called Verification and Commitment in Marital Relationships, an exploration of self-verification theory in community college students, found that people were less open and connected with their spouse if said spouse viewed them much differently than they viewed themselves, both when it was more positive and less so. Similarly, a 1996 study by Pinnell and Swan called The Cognitive Affective Crossfire Revisited: Affective Reactions to Self-Discrepant Evaluations found that individuals are likely to experience anxiety if they're confronted by feedback that strongly contradicts their self-image. For people with high self-esteem and generally positive self-views, the theory makes intuitive sense. It's not surprising that people who believe that they are lovable, competent, and worthy would also desire for others to see them in a similarly positive way. Naturally, we want others to think highly of us. The theory becomes much more interesting, though, in the case of individuals with negative self-views, low self-esteem, or depressive symptoms. These people don't view themselves as particularly likable, lovable, competent, or worthy, so you might intuitively think that they would be highly motivated to seek out positive feedback in order to boost their self-image. But, in fact, self-verification theory actually argues the opposite. Instead of compliments to make them feel better, these individuals prefer for others to see them in an equally unfavorable way as they see themselves. We just want other people's views of us to be aligned with our own, regardless of the circumstances of our self-views. Even when our self-views are negative and therefore conflict with our desire to maintain a positive image of ourselves, self-verification overrides that desire and is the stronger factor at play in how we feel about what others say about us. When someone sees us as we see ourselves, there's an implied instant understanding. People feel immensely validated and like they don't have to explain themselves. They can be themselves to the utmost degree. All sorts of good assumptions and attributions then occur, similar to what happens when we find someone similar to us. If you're someone who's known as intelligent or funny or entertaining, complimenting other people on those same positive personality traits that you have can make them all the more impactful. Beyond self-verification, there is a deeper level of validation because they are receiving that verification from a kindred spirit, one who is also in the know. You might feel more accomplished if you can make a comedian laugh as opposed to anybody else, and you may even like the comedian more because of it. Know what someone prides themselves on, and let them know you appreciate that about them. Likewise, agree with them on their self-assessments and make it clear that you agree and speak that same language. At this point, you might be wondering why the self-verification theory is true. What is it about verifying our self-views that we like so much that it's better than having other people view us as positively as possible? The theory suggests that our reason for preferring self-verification comes down to control. We live in a chaotic world, and getting consistency between our opinions of ourselves and the feedback we receive from others engenders some sense of control in our lives. We can anticipate how others will treat us, think of us, and behave around us. Having a good idea of what to expect, even when it's negative, means that we aren't surprised by danger in social situations. Moreover, when others verify our self-views, it gives us the impression that we know ourselves well, which also makes us feel better. The desire for self-verification is real and an important factor in likability. The question, as always, is what you can do with this knowledge to achieve more social success. Pay attention to how people are trying to show themselves, and then help them verify that self-image. For example, if you have a friend who often wears unorthodox and extremely colorful outfits, you could tell that friend that you see them as a unique and expressive person. Simply make it known that you see the image that they're trying to cultivate. Most people won't explicitly tell you how they want to be seen, but they will show it desperately in one way or another. Make an informed guess as to how they wish to be perceived and deliver it to them. Agree with people on their self-assessment of traits, strengths, as well as weaknesses. Try to understand the sub-messages that are being communicated to you when, for instance, someone tells you all about their camping prowess. They probably want to be recognized and verified as extremely capable in the outdoors. Is it manipulative or fake to give this to them? No, it's something much closer to validation, which is communicating in a way for people to feel heard and be understood. At the end of the day, we speak and behave in the simple hope of being heard. This has been The Science of Likability: 60 Evidence-Based Methods to Radiate Charisma, Make a Powerful Impression, Win Friends, and Trigger Attraction. Written by Patrick King, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2019 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King.